When I was younger, I got used to enjoy watching anime. I was really fascinated by a lot of the fictional narratives and stories and plots that they used to showcase and feature in a lot of these series. And although I don't watch them anymore, being older, lately I've had the chance to revisit one of the shows that I used to be quite fond of, by the name of Attack on Titan. Being older, I've been able to realize how the story and narrative of Attack on Titan really points to a lot of biblical teachings and principles. So this video will just be about talking and explaining how biblical teachings and principles really apply and fit into place with reference to the narrative of and the story of Attack on Titan as a script. The story of Attack on Titan is a very good example of how cruel and how unjust and sinful human nature left to itself can be. Attack on Titan is a very good illustrative description of how wicked and sinful we as people are on our own, and how we on our own and by our own accord can never make peace and do what's right amongst ourselves. No matter how hard we try to make it right by ourselves, we by our own accord will never be able to end the cycle of selfishness, of hatred, of vengeance, of bloodshed. I personally feel that the cruelty and selfishness and failure after all the tireless efforts that we as humans can make to get towards peace is itself a very good signal as to why we need God in the first place. The perspective that the series as a whole offers is of two sides and how we as people see each of us as enemies amongst ourselves. Just as seen in the anime, there are plenty of two sides we face in our lives. And unlike what's portrayed in the anime, these two sides don't just have to be geopolitical. I'm not just talking with reference to violence and hate and wars and geopolitical tensions. That's not, as seen in the anime, that's not what I'm only highlighting here. The element of two sides that we face is not just geopolitical and is applicable in many senses. Social is also one of them. Even now in the current life, a lot of us operate from our own pains and hurts that we've experienced in the past. We as people, inevitably being selfish, fail to see in truth that we all are essentially the same. As also seen in the series, humanity's failure to be right is shown by the repetitive cycle of violence that we see, especially at the last few panels of the series, where even after all the sacrifice and all the humanly effort that we can make, the cycle of wars and conflicts and hate just continues on and on and on, as seen in the anime with all the nukes and all the military wars that we saw going on at the end of the series. My point being through all of this is that the very element of this constant cycle of hatred, wars and vengeance that we face as people, the very presence of repetitive violence and discord that we face amongst all of us is itself a very good evidence for why we need God in the first place. We cannot be complete by our own selves, and that's why we need God. There is one thing in particular that I'd like to recite from the Bible that highlights the point I'm getting to here, and it's what we see in Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. The story of the series and this verse are really synonymous. It just sums up, and it just puts everything I'm trying to say in a nutshell, and shows why our ways, our methods, our rules, our measures, our scales our ways are just not enough for us to be righteous, for us to be holy, for us to be justified, for us to be fair. And all of this is exactly why we need God. We trust on His ways, His rules. We rely on His wisdom, His understanding, not ours. Now certainly, after accepting Christ and being a new creation in Christ does not guarantee and does not naturally mean that all the issues that we face as people are going to vanish and solve themselves on their own. Even after accepting Christ, we will still suffer. Why? Because we are born in this world. It is the sinful nature we have being in a sinful world that we just cannot transcend past sin in this life. Which brings me to another interesting Bible verse. John 16:33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. The way there are so many parallels drawn in the series, and how each side and each person tries to do what's good for their own people, and in the way that they've been taught and in the way that they've seen reminds me again of Proverbs 14:12. There's a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. This is reference to two characters in the story, Eren and Gabi, who were essentially just two sides of the same coin, trying to fight and do what's good for their own people how they see fit. Something very interesting about the narrative of the whole story is how it has a very sad and emotionally heavy ending, which makes you ponder the cause and the reason and the meaning of all that was shown, which I personally feel is a very good way to pass on a message and let the audience really ponder and get into thought to decipher and to understand the meaning and the message that's being portrayed through the plot of all of what's shown in the series. It just makes you ponder why. What's the meaning? What's the message that's being conveyed through all of this? Now, with a couple of things in the story, I'd like to highlight some resemblance and similarities that I personally found with some characters and elements that we see in the series and with biblical elements and characters. This part from on ahead and everything I'm going to say ahead is merely just highlighting some similarities I personally found. I'm not endorsing any ideology, I'm not endorsing any concept, nor am I saying that a particular character was like someone in the Bible. I'm not meaning to influence anyone here, but I'm just illustrating some similarities that I found with the way the story is made and the characters are written with some things in the Bible. Let's start with Ymir Fritz, the founder. Some things about Ymir and her character as a founding titan remind me of a couple things about Jesus. The way Ymir died for an unworthy and a sinful man, just like Jesus did, is symbolic of how Jesus died for us, being so sinful while we were still sinners, while we were still ungodly and unjust in all sorts of ways. God chose to pursue His love and sent His only begotten Son to die for our sins, to reconcile us back to Him, purely and solely out of love. Similar to why Ymir sacrificed herself for King Fritz, while King Fritz was still evil. Again, this is not to say that Ymir as a character is playing the part of Jesus in the story. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there are a couple things and similarities and references that I feel match and remind me of a couple things in the Bible. Also the fact that Ymir was 2,000 years ago, just like Jesus was, and has been watching all things in history unfold ever since, just like God has been with us in spirit and has been seeing everything that we are doing and experiencing and feeling. Also, something very interesting in this series is the concept of the paths. The paths remind me of how no matter who you are, no matter what side you're on, and no matter if you're each other's enemy, you all have unity. There is a common identity that you face being Eldians that unites all of you. And similar to the Eldians who have a common identity in the founding titan, in the founder, Ymir, similar to that, it reminds me of how we as people, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you're born as, all of us are sons and daughters of God. Also the fact how the main character Eren was able to manipulate memories and just swift through and watch all the memories unfold and happen makes me think and makes me wonder that it's similar to how God accounts for everything we've done, everything we've seen, everything we've done, everything we've seen. Everything we've gained, witnessed, and experienced was not just in vain. It's not just a fleeting story that we're living in life. There is value, there is weight for what we've done, what we've seen, and everything that has happened in the past. Also, there is a character in this series that I personally find is very interesting, by the name of Zeke Yeager. Zeke as a character and the way he's written reminds me of a couple things that have been written in the book of Ecclesiastes. I personally feel his character has references and resemblance to King Solomon when he wrote Ecclesiastes. King Solomon, having all wisdom and everything that you could possibly witness and experience and enjoy in life, has written this book about after having done everything, after having enjoyed all kinds of pleasures and everything there is to offer in life, he wrote a lot of things in the book of Ecclesiastes that we find in the Bible. And Zeke as a character, with the knowledge that he has and the mentality that he carries, is synonymous with a couple things that King Solomon reached to as a conclusion. Similar to Zeke's ideology of how Eldians were better off dead and trying to ensure that they don't evolve further so that their lineage ends, and how life is just much more crueler than death, is what I personally find is synonymous with Ecclesiastes 7:1. Here it says, "A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth." Again, quoting myself again, I'm not endorsing biblical teachings to any philosophy here, nor am I saying that he was right in his philosophy. I'm just saying that there's resemblance that I personally find with what King Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes and Zeke Yeager's character as a whole, and in the way it's written. That'll be it for this video. This is about everything I wanted to highlight. I'd encourage you to go and watch Attack on Titan if you haven't yet already. In conclusion, in a nutshell, the narrative and everything we see in this plot and the story and this whole product of Attack on Titan really highlights how sinful we are as people, how we're not enough, how we're not sufficient to do what's right, how our own wisdom and capability is not sufficient for us to make things right by ourselves. The insufficiency as people that we face and the repetitive cycle of violence, bloodshed, hate, and division that we face as people is a very fact that highlights why we need God in the first place. We are born in a sinful world, but take heart and be of good cheer, because Jesus says he has overcome the world. Thank you for watching this video. I hope I helped you have some insight and learning from all the things I was talking about. If you'd like, check out other videos on my channel. I'll plug some right here if I can. I'm not sure. God bless you, and I love you.